This is Rating Descending.
Where we watch IMDb's worst 250 films so you don't have to.
I'm Michelle St. Clair.
And I'm Abigail Ward.
And this week we'll be watching God's Not Dead. College philosophy professor Mr. Radisson's curriculum is challenged by his new student Josh, who believes God exists. Let's watch.
That was like traumatizing.
Yeah, they're all bad. I feel like so far each week I've been progressively reminded by just how bad they are.
I think we stated this last week, but obviously the films will get worse as we go on.
Yeah.
I'm just not emotionally prepared for it yet.
What I was taken aback by was like, this is already the second religious movie we've done, and it is still bad in such a unique way.
2 out of the 3 films we've watched so far have been religious movies.
And yet all of them are bad for entirely different reasons.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting going through and just immediately sort of having a feeling of, oh, we're gonna not just like have a repeatedly bad experience, but all different flavors of bad movie.
Once a week, we're gonna sit through 2 hours of nonsense. Like, I'm already at the point where when I was watching the film, I was like, is this bad or am I just dumb?
Yeah.
Like, I've started to question my own sanity.
No, but this movie does that. This movie, I feel more than anything, because the other movies are bad. This one's trying to argue at you that you're stupid.
Exactly, and it's trying to pose as an intelligent film while it's incredibly badly made. So yeah, I just feel like 3 movies deep already. I'm like, you said earlier today,
yeah.
Do you think this will make us dumber? Yes.
I stand by that.
Wholeheartedly, yes. This process will only make us devolve as human beings.
The premise of the podcast of one bad movie a week means this is a 5-year thing. I think the whole first year is going to be us just existentially grappling with the Herculean task we've undertaken.
And as of today, we've put out the first episode, which means that we've committed to this now. People that I know that we're making this, and I feel like after watching God is Dead, I was like, shouldn't have told people about this podcast.
Yeah, we could have called
really
it quits
myself.
right here, and we would have been just 2 bad movies in.
If I hadn't already posted about it, I'd consider it. That was a lot to get through, and it did just occur to me that 5 years can definitely stunt a person if you're doing, if I picked up a habit and did it once a week for 5 years, I would never stop doing it. And I'm just worried that this will warp my brain forever. That in 5 years' time, I'll be like a shell of the person.
We have to acknowledge that this is a movie so bad. I can't think of any other piece of art so bad that I've reconsidered entire years-long projects of my life. I've never watched a movie so bad that I'm going to be like, I'm going to stop actively doing this thing.
I've never watched a movie so bad where I've reconsidered the entire career path that I'd like to go down. Because watching this film and knowing someone got paid to write that makes me just lose all faith in the film industry. Why do I want to be a screenwriter? Or at least, why do I want to be a good screenwriter when I could write films like that and still get paid for it?
Yeah, I remember when I was a student, everyone was like, oh, hey, et cetera, that bad movie got made, and your writing's already better, so you should feel good. I'm like, it makes me feel worse, because I'm skill doesn't come into it.
Yeah, exactly. It's disillusioning.
To get into it, so the overall premise of the movie is, as you described it, the Love Actually of religious films.
Yes.
Because it's the A plot is, what the fuck is his name? The A plot, Josh. The A plot is Josh starts attending a philosophy lecture held by Mr. Radisson, Jeffrey Radisson, who wants him to admit that God is dead, and he's like, no, God's not dead, and so he starts debating him in class. Meanwhile, there's also a Muslim woman who becomes a Christian, and then there's also then there's also the professor's wife is religious, and that's the whole plot line.
And she has a brother who's an asshole who's dating a young woman called Amy, who's a journalist who gets cancer, and it challenges her perception of God.
Yes, which is, a very generous description of the plot.
Yes.
And then there's also the sort of D story of the reverend, who is the pastor for all of these people, has car troubles.
And as I said, God is the best mechanic.
Yes.
That's what he learns.
Yeah, so all of these plot lines just sort of occur in any order at any time, and then eventually all resolve at the end.
During a concert.
Yeah, which was
takes
really
up
something.
a huge portion of the film.
A surprising chunk of the third act is just watching the Newsboys play Christian rock.
Yeah. I feel like that is definitely like a film crime when there's like a whole scene of them at a concert, but they're actually showing the whole song being played.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like real time. You watch a 3-minute and 45-second song on stage.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be in a film, man.
That's padding at best. That's nothing. It's like when there's a montage sequence that's just a whole song. Like in Tarzan when they have the Phil Collins song and it's just Tarzan like doing stuff to the tune of a Phil Collins song.
Can you feel the love tonight?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
See, this is what I'm leading up to, though. You know what film didn't commit this crime?
What?
Angus thongs and perfect snogging. And
Disagree.
let me tell you why. At the end, there's a whole sequence where they start singing Ultraviolet, which was like every 13-year-old girl's jam back in 2008. But they didn't do the full song. They did like 2 minutes of it, which was fun. And then at the end, the plug gets pulled and the villain steps out onto the stage, But perfect filmmaking.
2 minutes is too close to song length.
No.
It's too much of just a song length.
Have you like watched that film? Because it's pretty flawless.
The movie that you always reference that has a song is Eurotrip, where there's the Scotty doesn't know.
Yeah, but that's a plot beat because he finds out that his girlfriend's cheating on him.
But it's also only like 30 seconds of the song.
Yeah.
We don't just hear the whole song.
Actually,
and it's a funny song. So like, it works.
Let's watch Eurotrip. You got to see it.
That's the kind of
bad... You know too much about it for not having seen it.
I've never seen it, and I feel like you've referenced it every single month I've known you.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like I'm missing a cultural milestone.
You are. Yeah. That is true.
But so overall thoughts of this, I was about to call it Nothing to Lose because of course they're just both so...
Let's just keep talking about Eurotrip. That'd be way more fun.
Yeah, well, I guess what always strikes me about movies like this is how like I get upset and mad at movies that basically like it's setting up an argument that you know the answer to. The movie constantly does this thing where they're like, oh man, this is a hard thing. And then another character will like walk in and be like, it's God. And it's like, you made that situation happen. You wrote the whole thing. Like, it's not watching a real life example of something.
100%. I mean, I went into the film with a super open mind. Like, neither of us are religious people at all. And I tried to go into it thinking like, okay, it's a religious film and it's going to be evangelical. Like, it's literally a film made to be like, this is why God is good. You should believe in God.
Yeah.
So I went with an open mind knowing that was going to be the angle, but I should still like, hear the film out.
Yeah, like not prejudge it.
Yeah, exactly. But I've never left a film so staunchly atheist in my life.
Well, yeah, and I guess a good example of what I mean is right at the end, the liberal blogger who has cancer walks in to talk to the newsboys about the fact that she has cancer.
Yeah.
So she walks in to do it, and they're like, you came here to judge us, but I think you're really here to find out if this God stuff is really true. I'm like, you wrote that. You made that character do that.
100%.
Like, he's not clever. You made him say that and her do that.
Let's talk about that journalist for a moment. Because, as we said, this is the Love Actually of religious films, and there's a couple of different threads that are going on.
Yes.
She has a plotline that's pretty much separate to the entire film, but she's kind of wrapped up in it because she's at the concert at the end, and she's dating a dude that is the brother of the woman that's dating the bad professor.
Yes. They all are connected to each other
6
by
degrees
the end.
Somehow, yeah. And so she is a journalist, and literally the first thing we see is that she's running to her car. She wakes up and she can't wait for her food because she's impatient. She runs to her car, and on the back of her car, you see stickers being like, meat is murder. And you're like, oh, she's a lefty. Okay, yeah, she's bad. She's evil.
What lefty, like, beat up the writer of this movie to have them such a chip on their shoulder?
Because the thing is, like, that meat is murder sticker is meant to indicate to us, the audience, that she's different to the cast.
Yes.
That she's not conservative.
Yes.
So that means that her mind has to get changed by the end of the film.
That's the thing that gets me about a movie like this. Like, I go in going like, I'm not going to prejudge it for being Christian.
No.
But then it really conflates being Christian with being conservative and being left with being a bad person.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I can't, like, at one point they get the liberal blogger to accuse someone like, so you on your show pray to Jesus. How can you do that? Like, as if it's that's an actual accusation.
Right after she says, so you hunt animals, how are you okay with that?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're one way, you're definitely going to be this other way. Like, they have completely generalized.
Yeah. It's
anyone that isn't religious.
It's a caricature of a meme. It's not even a caricature of a person.
It's like, I bet the writer probably, like, before he had a name for this character, just called her like libtard cuck, you know?
Yeah.
That was the working name.
By the way, the person that she confronts is Willie Robertson, the actual host of Duck Dynasty.
Who the fuck is that?
So
in the thread, she goes up and she confronts a man coming out of a vehicle with his wife, and I got the impression that he was a famous dude.
Yeah.
But I'd never heard of this man.
Okay, so when we saw him, I was like, oh, they're doing a Duck Dynasty thing. And then when I was doing the research, I was like, oh, it is the Duck Dynasty guy.
Right, okay.
Which, do you know what that is?
I used to put away copies of it at JB Hi-Fi when I worked in the DVD section.
Just a family of ultra-conservatives.
It was right next to like ice truckers and porn stars.
Which I think are three very tonally different, but thematically similar.
They're all spiritual sequels of one another.
But yeah, so like it was so weird seeing this actual guy. I mean, they're known for being ultra evangelical as well as being super conservative.
Yeah.
I feel like if either of us walked on their property, we would get shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
which is handy to know if I'm having a particularly rough one.
Yeah. It's just an interesting way to
just walk with my arms open.
Be done with it, but also implicate somebody else.
I'd like to take him down with me.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like every time someone's like accusing somebody else, you know, because they're an evil lefty, it was at someone who is an actual like well-known Christian figure who would then turn around and not react like a person. They would react by going, well, you know, Jesus is life and life is eternal, and just like start like actually proselytizing.
Yeah.
And it was so, like, it's so outside of the realm of human behavior.
God is good.
Yeah.
So another thread in the film was that preacher and the missionary.
Yeah.
That wanted to go on a holiday together.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that one out. That's why I didn't launch straight into like the plot synopsis, is I wanted to figure out what the fuck was going on.
I'm going to put my feelers down here.
Yeah.
Let's just suss this out together.
We'll go to that and then we'll like build up to the A story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
So, the preacher and the missionary.
Sorry, reverse cowgirl.
I think the preacher's like going to go on a mission because he's bored with being a preacher or something.
So,
or is he going on a holiday?
He picks him up from the airport at the beginning. The first time we see the pastor is he's picking up the missionary from the airport.
Yeah, so maybe they're swapping.
I thought they were going to Florida together.
Are they going to Florida together?
They mentioned going to Florida and amusement parks. Like they're going on holiday. Are they just like buddies that used to go to church together, and he's come back after being a missionary and he's a really good pastor and the other pastor's okay, and then they're going to go on a holiday and then they get in the car and the car doesn't start. Yeah. Which, by the way, so they get into the car and the car doesn't start, and I'm like, oh shit, there is things that this film is doing good, and there is a couple of things that the film does. Yeah. It's conflict. It's they have a goal, which is to get in the car and drive away, and the obstacle is that the car won't start. Yeah. That's good conflict. And I was like, this is what Breaking Bad does, you know? Like they get in the RV and the RV doesn't turn on. They use the water to get the generator to cool down. Like in Breaking Bad, there's always these little obstacles to one goal. But I didn't realize this was a long form obstacle, and how like, even though they did some things right, the fact that they can't get in their car to leave the city is shit conflict. Yes. Because they extended it over an hour and 15 minutes rather than, say, 5 minutes.
Well, so there's one bit where they're intercutting that story with the A story, and we'll get to it. And so I'm like, oh, so he can't go somewhere, so his story is going to somehow intersect with the protagonist.
Yeah.
But it doesn't.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder why it's there at all.
Yeah, because at the beginning, he does meet Josh, and he's like, hey, Josh, you should do this. Like, I was duped into thinking that this film had a good sense of structure at the beginning because he has, like, we'll get to the A story, but when Josh decides that he might have to debate this professor, this pastor and him meet. And the pastor's like, you can do it, man. And I'm like, oh shit, that's his mentor. Okay, perfect. We're hitting all the structural beats. And then the film fell apart. But they do coincide, and then he just doesn't fucking talk to Josh for the rest of the film.
He's like if in Love Actually, they all had the same friend who would show up in a scene and go, you got it, man.
Yeah.
And then they would do the thing. Like, that's
do you mean Rowan Atkinson's character in Love Actually?
Yes,
he's
angel. Rowan Atkinson's character.
Except Love Actually did it properly.
Yes.
And sparsely.
Important bits of pretext with that preacher that to me explained why he was there and unimportant. One is that apparently the character becomes important in the 2 sequels.
Oh, yes.
And also the guy who plays him, David A.R. White, is a co-founder of the production company PureFlix. So I'll get back to that. Okay. I'll come back to that. But that's why he's like there. We're meant to sort of, I think, know who he is. And we go, oh, fuck, it's that guy. The preacher, he'll go save the day, and that's it.
Yeah.
To your point about like conflict, like the conflict is that the car won't start. And so they go, okay, we'll call a thingy. We'll call a rent-a-car. A few scenes later, the rent-a-car arrives and then it doesn't work. Crazy. And then a few scenes later, they call another one, but it doesn't work. Oh my God. And then a few scenes later, the missionary is like, hey, we'll just pray and the car will work. And the preacher's like, that's stupid. And then they do it anyway, and then the car works. And that's my problem with a lot of the evangelical cinema, is that it's there's ways to do Christian films, but like the way to do it is not there is a conflict and it is solved by God.
We've been talking about this as well. Obviously, like, God solving conflict is its own issue within religious films.
Yes.
In terms of just general conflict issues, we've been talking about this. You need to escalate the conflict.
Yeah.
It has to keep growing and growing. Like, the next time the car shouldn't just not start. It should set on fire. Like, things have to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And the fact that it was literally the same problem 4 times and then God solves it, the worst.
Which again,
the worst.
It bothers me because it's a fake situation that the writer wrote. Like it doesn't count as something as a convincing argument because the writer made that happen.
Yeah.
So it's not anything. It's just me watching someone's car suddenly work.
Yeah.
It's not a story.
I honestly think that their little fucking D story would have been a great film on its own if it was better written.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Like someone's Christian student film.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have been fun. That kind of could have been cool.
Yeah, I would have been behind that. But yeah, it just sucked as a D story.
Yeah.
And it really strangely finishes wrapped into the A story at the end.
Yes, it does.
Which we'll get to.
Yeah. So we'll go back to the liberal blogger because hers is probably the most removed from the A story. So she, at the beginning, she is just like this snarky, horrid reporter. Well, that's what we're meant to think of her.
Who believes in not eating meat and wants to report on news. And what a bitch for being so fucking assertive and having her own career and dating.
What a horrible human being.
Yeah, agreed. So that's why when she gets cancer, she deserves it.
Yeah, it is quite her storyline is she is snarky lefty who gets cancer. So
Snarky Lefty is my drag name. Welcome to the stage, Snarky Lefty.
That's not a bad drag name, in my opinion.
Or a cocktail name.
Oh, yeah.
Usually they go hand in hand. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so her boyfriend breaks up with her for reasons that I can't quite fathom other than he's an atheist and thus is immoral. That feels like the point the movie's trying to make.
Yeah, well, like, it's like she has cancer, so she tells him and he goes, well, we can't get together because we're only here to service each other and now you can't service me. And you're like, he's a dick. And the only people that will accept this dying woman are religious people.
Yes.
She just needs to find her clan of religious people that will make her feel loved and accepted.
Well, then over the course of the next hour, in a recurring theme of this movie, she just has cancer.
Yeah.
And she doesn't do anything.
There's an incredible scene where she's sitting at her desk and she's reporting on something. And she's writing like, I have cancer. Amy is dying.
Yeah.
She's Amy.
Yeah.
And then she picks up her laptop and throws it against the wall. And then she kind of sits on her chair screaming and crying and kind of just wriggles to the floor. It was my favorite scene.
It's very sexy.
Yeah, it was big 10 on.
Yeah. So then at the end, she shows up at the concert and she's trying to accuse them of being bad, but then...
Well, she tries to accuse the band of being bad.
Yeah.
She storms into the fucking rehearsal room, the
flashing
back room.
A card.
Yeah. And then she's basically like, why are you religious? Oh, God is terrible. How could you believe in him? And then your favorite bit, where the guy's like, God told me that you would come here. Well, God's telling me that that's why you're here, is that you want to believe in God. And she's like, yes.
Yeah.
And then they all pray for her.
And that's it.
Well, yeah, we don't know the outcome of her cancer.
She probably
still died.
dies.
Yeah. We could only find out
I didn't realize...
God is Dead too.
Oh my God. I'm so glad we don't have to watch it.
It's not on the list?
I don't think so.
So the first one was worse. I guess no one watched the second one or the third one.
Let me check now.
Because important to note, we're only doing things, like the list only includes things that have 10,000 votes or above.
Yes.
So if you ever see a film that is really low in its IMDb rating and we never cover it, that's why.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'd have to like troll the internet for things that 3 people have reviewed and
like
someone
Fart the
made for
movie.
$5,000. Yeah, for like Fart the movie, which is... I never want to see that again.
Oh, yeah.
That really tested my love of bad movies. Yeah, so one of the other storylines that was definitely, for me, my least favorite was...
But it had one of the best moments.
We're on the same page with the Muslim girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was wild. I feel like they definitely didn't ask any Muslim people about how Muslim women feel about Islam or practice Islam.
Yeah.
There was a lot of basic things. Like, I'm pretty sure, as far as I could tell from researching to double check, that's not how you wear a hijab.
No.
At all?
No, because hijabs don't actually, I don't know that much either, but I was confused because she was wearing it like it was a hijab, but she also had to cover her face. And I was like, isn't that a niqab or like a burqa?
Yeah, it wasn't a full body thing. It was just the headscarf.
And look, again, maybe it's something very particular to a religion that they were following. I don't know enough about it to really dispute it, but it did seem like it wasn't. I've never seen someone wear a headscarf like that.
And given the source material, I definitely think it's more likely that they're wrong than we're wrong.
I think you've probably done already more research into it than the writer did.
Yeah, which was literally Googling hijab and Googling niqab just to make sure I'm remembering these words right?
So she's like a young woman that works at the university in the cafeteria.
Yeah, she has a ultra-conservative Muslim dad.
Yeah, who is adamant that she stay in their religion, that she wear the headscarf, that God is almighty.
The whole storyline really screams of that particular white Christian thing of, if we fight Islam, we're saving women.
Yeah.
Which a lot of Muslim women have said, hey, don't talk for us.
100%. Like, there's literally a scene where this young white fucking woman walks up to her and is just like, I wish you didn't have to wear that. You're so beautiful. Which for a moment I was like, are they gay? Are they gay? Are they going to be like fall in love with something? Like, I got really excited.
No, see, that would be the evil lefty movie equivalent.
This is true. This is true. Amy should have been gay just to top it off.
Yeah, that would have made me give it a point. Yeah, so like the whole storyline is just, we see about how living with this Muslim dad is a bad thing for her because she secretly believes in Jesus.
Yeah.
I definitely also think it's, again, that white Christian thing of not understanding the relationship between Islam and Christianity, who don't believe in different gods.
Yeah.
It's the same God.
Yeah.
They just believe in a different amount of prophets.
Just that, yeah, she was listening to a section of the Bible.
Yeah.
She was listening to a section of the Corinthians, and her dad finds out. And it's incredible the way they do it, because as soon as she goes home and you see shots inside her house, it's the worst bit of direction in the whole film.
Yes.
She comes home and she's lying on a bed and she's listening to Corinthians on her iPod.
Yeah.
And then her little brother comes in and just takes it out of her hands and sees it. And she's like, don't you ever tell Dad. And it's such a dramatic moment. And then a couple scenes later, she's lying in bed and her dad opens the door and snatches the iPod and he sees Corinthians, and she looks over at her little brother who's standing guiltily in the hallway.
Yeah.
And you're like, why would he tell his dad?
Why would he?
I honestly don't believe that.
I don't know if that little kid would know from a glance that
it was wrong.
That it was from the Bible.
Yeah.
It was just like Christian art and then the word Corinthians.
If I was like fucking 5 and saw someone's iPod and it said Corinthians, I'd be like, that sounds like a boring band.
Yeah.
Why do they have such weird cover art? Like,
I also wouldn't snatch the iPod, but that's a whole different question.
The whole 5-year-old brother character, and this is hard to say because the film was so nonsensical, was the least believable character in the film, aside from one other character, which
girlfriend?
was the professor, which we'll get to.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah, it also, like, for me, so the whole movie is part of that whole, like, modern movement of, like, Christians feeling persecuted.
Yeah.
That scene in particular where she's like, don't you tell him, don't you dare tell him. I'm like, this movie is equating what, like, actual living gay people and trans people and stuff go through with being Christian at all.
100%.
And it's weird.
It's a classic case of like someone that is suddenly perhaps not going to be the majority for much longer, thinking they're already the victim.
Yeah,
and
they're still the majority.
Before watching these films, you knew that religious films existed, right?
Yeah.
That there'd be films like this on the market. I don't know if there would be that many films about atheists.
No.
I don't think there's that many atheists preaching this shit. And again, I'm trying to see things as fairly and as rationally as possible. I just don't think that atheists have bothered to make a film about why God doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
I don't think they need to.
There's stuff that like Richard Dawkins makes that is like aggressively atheist or whatever, but that's very different than like a movie that is trying to like actively make the case.
A lot of the time, an atheist film is probably a documentary about the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Because it's factual.
Which this movie tries to both make the case and not make the case that that's because of God, which I think is like, if you're going to go for an argument, a theological argument, that's a good one to make.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't really hold much water in the context of the rest of the film.
Yeah.
That's my problem with it.
To quickly tie off the girl's storyline,
Yes.
after her dad finds out, it's this incredibly emotional
Oh my
scene
God.
where he slaps her over the face 3 times and then he kind of drags her out of the house and this insane song starts playing.
Yeah, and there's these extreme close-ups. All of the close-ups in this movie were too close and framed badly.
Yes.
Everyone had tons of headroom.
Yeah. 100. Sorry, I don't know that much about directing, but I couldn't stop thinking about the framing.
Yeah, heaps of headroom on like chin level close-ups. And so, yeah, he drags her outside and it looks like he's choking her for a while.
Yeah.
Which I thought was what was happening.
Which I thought was hot.
And like they stare at each other. I don't think that man has ever acted in his life before because he certainly didn't make that case in the movie.
No.
Because yeah, he's just standing there sort of looking blankly and she's like in tears with his hand around her throat.
And then he leaves her and he closes the door and she's screaming on the street and he's crying in the stairwell.
Oh my God.
It was amazing. Then she ends up at like basically the pastor's house.
Yeah.
And he takes her in.
His house, the church, right?
Yes. Isn't that his house? I don't know how these people work. And then he's just like, God is cool. You'll love him. Stick with us, kid. And she's like, great. And then she goes to the concert at the end. And
happy ending.
She looks super happy after being shunned by her entire family.
Yeah.
Like a day beforehand.
See, like, this is the thing. This movie thinks that the lefties version of that story is she's happy in her evil Muslim family. Whereas the actual lefty one is she's happy with her choices.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
And again, this film does do a fair few things right, especially in like some of the debate scenes, which we'll get to now.
Yeah.
Because that's the A story.
Yeah.
But it does do a couple of things right, and it does ultimately tell us that people should be allowed to make their own choices.
Which I think is very interesting given a lot of the context of the movie.
Exactly.
But isn't inherently a bad statement.
It's like, I know
That's
a character is saying this right now. I just don't feel like you're giving me a choice when I'm watching this film.
Yes, that's it.
That's the problem.
They're saying it's like, it's all about the choice to choose to believe, but like...
But the film has been like, but God exists and he isn't dead.
And it's the same thing that I'm telling you about like, it's trying to make a case by having the characters do things that humans wouldn't. It's just that the writer's writing that.
Yeah.
The whole thing is that, oh, you're supposed to have the freedom to choose. But no one's actually taking away that choice except for this incredibly ridiculous fictional character of the atheist professor who is demanding he writes on a piece of paper, God is dead, to skip a unit of their
this is why his character makes no sense. I just refuse to believe that this man exists in general. So that means that because he's the main antagonist of the film, and the fact that I don't believe anyone would do the things that he does, it makes the whole conflict redundant because I'm like, this is stupid. No one would do this.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the A plot.
Yes. So at the beginning, you know, he's Josh is starting this university. And by the way, the whole opening feels like a Disney Channel original movie.
Yeah, it actually got me hyped. I was like, is this a Hallmark film?
This song was written by the guy who plays the lead character.
No.
I know. That's why it's so bad.
Yeah, I have to say, I didn't think he was a bad actor. He was a bad actor caught in a terrible... I mean, he was an average actor caught in a terrible film.
I'll put it this way. I think he's one of the better actors on this list.
Yes.
That doesn't put him in the realm of good, but for this list, not bad.
Not bad. I think the best actor was the old woman.
Which is funny because there's a handful of notable actors in this. So he just does this course and he's doing philosophy for whatever reason. It's to do pre-law, which the professor doesn't understand and I don't understand either.
Yeah.
And so he starts this thing and then this professor comes out, who, by the way, is played by Kevin Sorbo.
Okay.
Who was in the Hercules TV show in the 90s. So it's Hercules.
He's Hercules?
He's Hercules.
He looks like a bad John Hamm.
It's Hercules.
No!
He's the original John Hamm. John Hamm wishes he was Kevin Sorbo.
No, I would wish to be John Hamm.
I wish
Kevin Sorbo has weird eyes. They're real shrunken, like.
And is apparently stars in weird Christian movies. But
yeah. John Hamm wouldn't do that.
It was bothering me so much that I'm like, Hercules, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? I used to see you believe in all kinds of gods. The professor starts demanding that everyone else has to write down on a piece of paper that God is dead. He also lists off like the 15 most famous atheist
that was my
philosophers.
favorite bit.
That was
he
my
was
favorite
like, philosophy, and he turns his board over and he's just written a list of philosophers.
And he just reads them out.
Yeah.
And it really is like the greatest hits of aggressive atheism. He's like Richard Dawkins, Nietzsche, Descartes. And it's like, oh my God. It's just...
That's when I got really excited for the film.
It hyped me up for something more silly than it ultimately was.
Yeah. It had a promising start.
Yeah.
And a real drag of a finish.
Josh can't write down that God is dead because he just doesn't believe it.
He can't do it. He believes that God is alive.
So Hercules challenges him to debate in class the existence of God, which again, if all of the students wrote it down, they would skip that whole unit of their course, of their philosophy class.
Which I don't believe is a thing that can happen in a university.
I mean, American schools seem wild, but I still don't think it can happen.
No.
Yeah. And it's also strange that, again, like this debate, it was initially going to be debating against him and then it's against the whole class, but he's the one grading it, is worth 30% of his mark.
And like, also, but in terms of skipping it, does that mean they just don't have to attend for the rest of the semester? Or do they come to class, but they just don't study? Do they just hang out like friends? How does that work? What's the logistics of it?
This is the whole thing, is that the movie's setting up conflict so that someone is persecuted, but the conflict doesn't make any sense.
No, that's what
there's
I mean.
No actual water behind it.
The antagonistic force doesn't make sense. It's not believable. So everything he throws at Josh, you're like, this shouldn't be happening in the first place.
Yeah.
So and so like that's basically the A story, is that Josh, he wants to prove him wrong. He has a girlfriend that he's been with for 6 years, and she's like, you can't debate him. I've mapped out the rest of our 50 years together, and you have to get your degree. And if he fails you, then our future won't be certain anymore, which is a weird stake to put down. She's like, I forbid it, Josh. I don't understand
why.
This is too much of a risk for us.
Also, she's the worst actor in this whole thing.
Yes,
for sure. Even more so than the dad, who I thought was bad because he was blank, but at least he didn't have that many lines.
Yeah, true.
Whereas she constantly is like, we can't do it, Josh. 6 years. And also she's like, you're not going to throw 6 years away. And then like 2 scenes later is like, it's over. And he's like, whoa, what? And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, you didn't listen to that one thing I said, so we're done.
Yeah. So he's got a girlfriend that he ends up having to break up with because he's too dedicated to studying. And you see a couple images of him going to the library and checking out books and doing his research. And he goes in for the first debate and he is thrown a question back by the professor that he can't answer. Which was it a Stephen Hawking's quote?
Yeah, so he's talking about the Big Bang and how the Big Bang could be God.
Yeah.
Again, like, not a horrible argument or anything.
No, that's really interesting arguments to listen to.
Well, there's half of an interesting argument. He throws a Stephen Hawking quote at him and basically says, like, Stephen Hawking said that it wasn't God and Stephen Hawking's really smart. You're not smarter than him.
So then he has to go away and think about how to be smarter than Stephen Hawking.
And this is what I mean. Josh sounds smart compared to the atheist professor.
Yeah.
And that's how we're meant to go, man, I guess they're right about God. But what professor's whole argument is Stephen Hawking is smarter than you, therefore you're wrong?
At first he's like an antagonistic force being like, you need to tell me why God exists. And so that's his big challenge. But then after the first debate, Josh is walking out of class and literally the professor comes up behind him and grabs him and like pulls him back like really violently.
Yeah.
And he's just like, listen, all right, I'm God in that room, okay? You've got another thing coming. And he's like actually physically threatening him. And you're like, oh, okay. He's somehow even more unbelievable as a character now. The fact that he's threatening students on campus.
He's nuts.
Yeah.
And he also goes home to his wife. His wife is very Christian. A plot twist.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really mean to his wife because he's
very
an
verbally
atheist.
Yeah, he's very verbally abusive. And
he has like a dinner party with the rest of the philosophy department.
Which are the most boring crowd of people I've ever seen.
Yeah. And when the wife goes like, oh, I still believe in God, he's like, oh, we're converting her. And like everyone in the room turns to glare at her as if they're this evil group of philosophers.
Yeah. And then they all stand by happily to watch him verbally abuse his wife in front of everyone at dinner. And she leaves upset.
Can confirm every lefty atheist I know would say, hey, man, don't talk to your wife like that.
And can we not have meat on the menu next time? That's his personal life. So you just keep increasing the levels of his villainry. Is that a word, villainry?
Important at this point. So this is some of the trivia I was going to mention later. Every Christian in the film owns an iPhone, except the professor, who doesn't because of Apple's long-standing policy that villains can't have iPhones.
You're kidding me.
No.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So everybody uses an Android?
Yeah.
Like a commie cuck?
Classic lefty move.
I didn't know that. That's insane.
It's so weird.
So Jobs write that clause himself?
It's something about like promoting it positively rather than promoting it negatively.
Interesting.
Whereas like every other phone company is like, we need to get a foot in the door.
Yeah.
So there's this back and forth between them until...
And they have 3 debates in total.
Yeah.
3. And then after the second debate, he says to him, why do you hate God?
No, that's the third debate.
No. He says, why do you hate him so much? And he goes, he says, because my mum died.
Oh, yeah,
That's when he gives him his tragic backstory.
But that's not in the debate, that's after.
Yeah, sorry, I did say it was after the debate.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
And he says, yeah, like my mum died, and if she believed in God her whole life, so why did he take my mum?
Yeah.
Which is classic backstory shit. That's what I loved about this film. It was so cliched, you could see every line coming. So it was almost like a really warming familiarity while you watched it, you know?
Yeah.
Like you'd watched it 1,000 times already. But yeah, and so you find out his tragic backstory, and then there's the third debate.
In the third debate, which escalates, including Josh yelling at the professor.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. The only thing non-believable is that in an American university, a student was allowed to yell at a teacher without a security guard or someone with a gun coming in.
Yeah.
So in that debate, they're starting to yell at each other. It's clear that the students are on the side of Josh, and it becomes revealed that Hercules actually does believe in God. He just hates him.
I believe the line is, he says, I hate him, and then he goes, how can you hate something that you don't think exists?
Yeah. Which is meant to be like a mic drop.
But it's so nothing in the film. It is meant to be a mic drop, and there's a bit of a silence, but it's so poorly directed. You're like, is this like any other scene?
I read up. It literally means that Kevin Sorbo is described as practicing misotheism, which is where you believe in God, but you hate God. It's just a lot of nonsense. It doesn't mean anything.
And then at the end, all of the students in the lecture stand up in support of Josh.
Yeah,
and he's won everybody in the room
It's
over.
Dead Poet Society, but if everyone stood up.
Oh, Hercules, my Hercules.
So then they all go to this concert. The concert seems to be aware that there's a campus nearby because they refer to them as... they refer to the audience as being from campus.
Yeah.
Which definitely makes me think like it's... And by the way, it's a huge theater.
They said that there was 10,000 people in there.
Yeah, it's like an arena, right? They're there. We see... what was his name again? Robbie Williams? Willie
Robertson.
Willie Robertson.
Can't believe I got that right.
We see Willie Robertson again, like on the screen giving a message. But before we get to that, so outside, Hercules is like, you know what? Maybe I'll go to that concert. That's what I thought it was.
Well, he was trying to get in touch with Mina.
Yeah.
His wife who left him, being like, he just wanted to call her. And then he sees an article saying that this Christian rock group are in town.
Yeah.
And he's like, she's there, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Which is a crazy assertion. He must have known that she had tickets prior.
Yeah.
Because he's like, great, she's at that concert. So he just starts running. He starts walking to the concert, and it starts raining on him.
It's raining.
And he's standing on the corner, and he's waiting to cross the road. And meanwhile, our lovely pastor and missionary have finally left the city in their fucking car that finally started because God is the best mechanic.
Yeah.
And they're waiting there, and they watch Hercules walk across the road and get hit by a car that's ran a red.
Yeah.
And he's thrown into the air.
He's up in the air. He lands. The preacher runs out of the car to go get him. And like this for me was the most almost like mean-spirited scene because he's dying on the ground.
Yeah, this was fucked.
Yeah.
Like if I watched this as a kid, it would have just fucking bent my mind.
The missionary is like, oh, his ribs are collapsed, his lungs are filling with blood.
How did he know that?
I don't know how he knows
How
that.
did he know that?
And
was he a doctor? Was that established?
The preacher is saying like, oh, hey, Jesus loves you and, you know, God's going to help you. And he's like, I'm an atheist. And he's like, well then, you might think it's bad because the car could have killed you instantly, but it's actually great because it means that I get to tell you about God before you die.
Yeah.
And that's that
Take
scene.
This last minute to accept God.
And he converts back to Christianity.
And dies on the pavement. And then literally the missionary says, tonight was great.
It was good because we got to save that soul before he died. I'm like, a man died in your arms.
Yeah, that's a life gone. And you made him spend the last minute of his life listening to something that he vehemently didn't believe for his whole life.
I would never stop thinking about that moment if someone died in my arms.
No, I wouldn't stop thinking about it if I was a spectator watching this man talking to this man on the ground. If I saw that interaction, I'd be like, call the police with the ambulance. Just call them.
And this is intercut with Inside, where the newsboys are playing their rock.
Yeah, they're playing Christian rock and all the happy Christians are dancing to it.
Because it's a happy moment.
It's a happy moment because Hercules is dead. And then the band is like, hey guys, you should send out a message that God is not dead to everyone in your contact list.
Yeah, Willie Robertson appears on a screen and says, if you text 100 people and there's 10,000 of you, well, that's like 1 million people.
Yeah, text them, God's not dead.
Yeah.
And a million people will know.
Yeah.
And then it ends with them all dancing and them texting and Hercules dead on the ground because God won the debate.
And then a thing flashes up saying, text your friends, like encouraging the audience to also text their friends.
We actually watched the longest ad campaign in the world.
We did. We did. One thing that we missed because we turned it off as well is that at the end of the credits, it also flashes up a list of 37 lawsuits that Christian students have started against universities for not being allowed to practice their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, none of those cases resemble anything like the movie. They're all just Christians saying unpopular, controversial things and getting really angry that the college, is saying, don't do that. Don't say that. No one's stopping Christians from being Christian on university campuses.
No.
I can't. It's this whole modern persecution complex thing, and I can't handle it in the context of this movie, which makes the case for it poorly.
Yes. Again, I reiterate, there's a whole sequence at the end in the last debate where he says that everyone should have the choice to be religious or not. And this movie disproves everything he said.
Yeah.
Apparently, we don't have a choice. You either believe in God or you get hit by a car and your lungs fill up with blood and you die.
Yeah. I'm not saying Christianity is like the mafia. Well, I'm saying this movie is like the mafia because the mafia would go and like beat up your uncle and say, protection money's pretty good, right? And you'd be like, I guess I agree, but you made that situation happen.
This film is the Don Corleone of films, for sure.
That's what this movie is. It's trying to beat up your favorite in quotes people and go, seems like they're wrong, right?
Yeah.
You made them say that.
You know how one of these girls from uni, she's like strong and independent and feisty and she doesn't like to eat meat and she wants to be a journalist? Well, she's going to get cancer and die.
So, some facts about the film, right? For one thing, made for $2 million, made $65 million.
Upsetting, but okay.
Yes. It was made by...
It's a very good return. That's a very good return.
PureFlix, which is I mentioned earlier, it's a evangelical film production distribution studio, apparently inspired by Netflix. So it's not just a film studio. They also are their own streaming service.
It felt really Netflixy as a movie.
Yes. It is like a Netflix movie, but Christian.
Okay.
Because it's basically trying to be Christian Netflix, which for me explains a lot of the things about it. Similar to Nothing to Lose, it is literally a separate media organization making a movie about how great they are, including the founder being in it and being the person who has all the answers.
Again, 2 out of the 3 films we've done so far are religious films, and you've had to do both of them, and I apologize.
I know. I've learnt a lot about these churches. How long would you guess the shoot was?
The shoot?
Yeah.
Honestly, like a month.
20 days.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, so it took about 20 days to shoot. So Kevin Sorbo was Hercules. I should have mentioned that Dean Cain plays the dickhead boyfriend of the liberal reporter. Dean Cain played Superman in a Superman TV show.
Did he?
Yeah, I mentioned that he was in Lady Dynamite, but he was Superman. So we had Superman and Hercules in this movie.
Which is funny, I didn't think he was very good in this film.
I mean, he played Superman on TV.
Yeah.
In the 90s.
Yeah.
It's not...
So he's no Christopher Reeve.
He's famous, he's not good. I just found the answer to one of the things we were talking about before in the trivia. Although not said, it is implied and hinted that the pastors are going to Walt Disney World.
Florida.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They're going to Disney World. One of the important things, this is the one I really wanted to get to. So throughout the film, there's this Chinese character who begins the movie I don't know the name of the stereotype. You know how stereotypes have names?
Mm.
I don't know the name for the stereotype, but he is like the prim, proper, thoroughly Chinese soy boy weak man archetype.
Yeah.
Yeah. including multiple characters being surprised at how Chinese he is, which I don't know what that means. But throughout the movie, he has these conversations with his dad on the phone where his dad is like, stop believing in that God rubbish. And he's like, I'm going to believe it. I think the movie's trying to just like make the case to Chinese people because Christianity is the fastest growing religion in China.
Yeah, I think it's trying to make the case to like Chinese people and Muslim people and anyone that can really sink their fingers into.
Anyway, they talk on the phone. The character is talking in Mandarin and the dad is talking in Cantonese.
You're kidding me.
Which are completely different. They're not even like Norwegian and Swedish where they're like different, but they're
you can
mutually
tell.
intelligible. Well, I looked it up, but also like you can hear that they're different, even not speaking it. And I've edited multiple things in Cantonese at this point. Those languages are not compatible. You can't hear it and get it. They're not similar.
It's wild that like you're someone that can't even speak the two languages, but you picked up on that. So how white was the post-production team? How white are we talking?
To me, it makes me think, oh, they didn't like in the script write it and then translate it. They gave the script to these actors and said, speak Chinese.
Yeah.
They didn't say speak Mandarin. They didn't say speak Cantonese. They would have just have to have said speak Chinese and then believe them.
Yeah.
Which is wrong for like 8 different immediate reasons and countless more.
Well, they didn't have time to have like a translator on set. They had to save that money for the enormous, lengthy concert sequence at the end.
But you don't even need a translator. You should have someone who speaks that language on set.
You just need someone like you that happens to be around.
Who is at least aware that they're different languages.
Yes.
And ask them to speak one of them, not either of them.
His storyline was pretty much the same as the girls, except he didn't get thrown out of his family. It's more that he was just like, I believe in God. And his dad was like, don't. And he was like, I do. Goodbye, Dad.
Well, yeah, the dad was representing all of Islam, whereas the Chinese guy's dad was representing all of communism in China.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they made a very specific point at the beginning that he was like, I'm from the People's Republic of China.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they're trying to make that
include.
point of like trying to counteract the anti-theist stance of the Communist Party.
Yeah.
It's such a head trip trying to unpack why the decisions were made in this movie, but I don't know if we're going to find a very concrete answer.
I'd like to reiterate, this film was so bad, it made me think that I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
I started to question what was good and what was bad in the process of watching that film. And in the last 5 minutes of it, you were wriggling for it to stop.
I was.
You had a temper tantrum because we were like 5 minutes away from the end and it wasn't coming soon enough.
Yeah. I mentioned just then, he spoke in Mandarin, the dad spoke in Cantonese. Similarly, Aisha, the Muslim girl, when her dad speaks, he speaks in Farsi, which is from Iran, but all of their names are Arabic and they're meant to be Arabic. And again, those are different things.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
It's consistent in how many inconsistencies this has. Like, the film is consistent in its inconsistencies.
That's true. I will say there's no point in which I thought it was going to be consistent, and it wasn't. It was always as inconsistent as I expected.
In that case, like, it set up some great expectations for us that it completely fulfilled. What would you rate this out of 10?
On one level, I probably had a worse time watching it than the other two.
Really? I had a better time watching it.
But I was more bored. I don't think it was worse, to be honest. In terms of like filmic quality, I think the other two were viscerally worse, but this one made me more bored, right? The other two had like such crazy decisions that I was at least like, what's going on? But in this, I knew exactly what was going on. I just didn't like it.
I think this was worse than Meet the Blacks. I think it was probably, I don't know.
It
the
made
first
me
one, Nothing
more
to Lose, was pretty terrible.
Frustrated. But like Meet the Blacks like failed to meet a basic standard of film quality. At least this one looked like it was shot by an adult.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
Okay, no, that's fair.
I don't agree. But what would you rate it out of 10?
I'd rate it 2. 2.5. I'd rate it 2.5. What would you rate it?
I'm really trying to like calculate this in my head. I'll give it a 2.5 as well.
Yeah.
But again, that's also 1 star out of 4. And if that seems too high, I'll give it a 2.5. 2.5.
2.5? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Also, my favorite review, I just saw the title of it. God's not dead, but the script should have been killed.
God's not dead, but my will to live is certainly dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's got 4.7. I don't know why it's that high. I would definitely rate it lower. I can never understand IMDb's specific algorithm.
This is what I'm excited about when we do this list, is to actually delve into how the algorithm works, why they are the bottom films, and also what political leanings or contextual surroundings will influence the score.
Its Metascore, its Metacritic score is 16%.
That's worse.
It's the worst one of the first 15.
Yeah.
So, like, it's a bad movie.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting the different ways that these 3 have been bad. And I feel like we're really gonna, like, we're doing a study, macro study on bad movies.
This is a huge study. This is gonna change who we are as people. Again, we're gonna be way worse people at the end of this.
I'm gonna learn a lot about the 2 main genres, which is Christian movies and parody movies.
Yeah.
Which are, without a doubt, the most represented genres in this list.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Me too. Me too. So something that I've been enjoying this week, because lockdown in Melbourne sucks, and it's the second version of lockdown, and it's very essential and it's very sucky. It can be both at the same time. I have a new project where I want to make a cat run in the garden. So I spent this week just like clearing shit out of our garden, and it's been so therapeutic. Yeah. And by clearing shit out, I mean, I gave it a sweep and then I bought a hose and hosed it down. But that's been so good. Yeah. I just felt very productive doing it. So that's my little happy thing of the week, is that I've started cleaning out our garden.
Well, my one is that I'm trying to put a Raspberry Pi computer inside of an old PS1 so that I can just turn it into like a retro games thing.
That's cool.
I'm excited for it. I don't know anything about like wiring or circuitry, and I'm going to need to learn a bit to make the buttons work.
I don't know anything about gardening.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look up how the fuck to use shears.
I like learning new skills as part of a project.
Yeah.
You know, like if it's a project that I already know how to do all of, it doesn't feel like as much of a project.
Yeah. And I was saying this to you the other day. As you say, we live together, so we know everything about each other already.
Yeah.
This is just for our 3 fans. Thanks, Mom and Dad and Zach. So
my family's not listening.
Your family fucking hate you. Sorry. I don't know where that came from. I've been rewatching Gilmore Girls, and Lorelai Gilmore is such an inspiration. Especially, like, she's a great character, and she does everything herself. She's very capable and smart and full of know-how, and even though things are tough all the time, she does it anyway. She literally makes her own inn out of a dilapidated inn. And literally, I want to do this cat run. I want to clean out the garden, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never built anything. I don't garden.
Yeah.
But literally, I'm inspired by my rewatch of Gilmore Girls being like, Lorelai Gilmore could do this, so I can do it.
My only problem with it is that I've always had the fantasy of like somehow turning an old warehouse into like a production space or something. But like,
we've got a shed out back.
How do you source that? How do you actually do that without it costing like $50,000?
Let's just do it.
Did Lorelai get like a business loan for $50,000 to do it? How did she do it?
She saves a lot of money, and there's this great episode in season 4 where she literally goes into Luke's diner and she's running out of money. She can't afford the renovations anymore. She's literally like, she hasn't paid anyone in ages. All the builders are threatening to walk out on her, and she goes into Luke's diner and she's crying and she's like, I'm a failure. Like, this is my dream and I can't do it. I don't have the money. It's all gone to shit. And he goes, I'll loan you the money. I'll loan you $30,000. Wow. And she's like, please don't. And he's like, you need it. This is your dream. I'll do it. And she thanks him. And it's hard for Laura. Like, she never wants to take things from anybody. She doesn't want help from anybody.
Yeah.
But Luke gives her 30 grand and she finishes it off and pays it all back to him.
That's
so it's
sweet.
Fucking hard for her.
Yeah.
It's really hard for Lorelai, and she still does it.
I don't know anyone who could lend me $30,000.
Get your own Luke.
Yeah, I'll just get, okay.
Yeah.
I'll become friends with the local diner.
I was just saying get a sugar daddy, but you can do that too. Yeah.
That works.
Yeah.
That works.
Get yourself a good coffee man, but he has to fall in love with you. That's the idea.
He's going to have, if he's okay with being disappointed, I'm okay with him falling in love with me.
You think he'll be disappointed by falling in love with you?
Well, because I won't fall in love back.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're gay. Yeah. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. All the bricks are falling into place.
The penny finally dropped.
Yeah, we did it. Yeah, so that was God's Not Dead. Next week is
Zoolander 2, and I'm doing it.
I was okay with my life being I hadn't seen it yet. But that's gonna change.
It's all gonna change, baby. I think we should watch Zoolander 1 as well, just to refresh our memory.
All right, well, that means next week is gonna just be Zoolander in general, with a special emphasis on Zoolander 2.
Yes. Join us next week for the next episode next week, which will be coming out next week, we'll have the next episode.
Yeah.
Next week, I think.
The week after this one.
Not the last week. It's the next week.
Yeah.
That will have not the last episode, the next episode. The next week we'll have the next episode.
So stupid.
Join us then.
See ya.
Bye.